Right. Paul Miller, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you today.
Thanks very much. Nice to be here, James. It's good.
Good. Okay, so the reason I wanted to talk to you, being the tech guy, as I refer to you commonly within this business, is I was recently referred to you, and we've had a couple of conversations with regard to tech, data, and AI. And because this podcast series is on what does the future look like, what better person to tell me what does the future look like when it comes to tech, data, and AI? So you got the short straw. So thank you for volunteering to be on today.
I'm probably thinking of regretting that now, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to start off with is a bit more about yourself, Paul, because we've had a few conversations, but I'm conscious that a few people don't know you. So, okay, let's try this as a starting point. So if you were to meet somebody at a wedding, or maybe at our age, a funeral, who knows, how would you introduce yourself, and what would you say your skill sets are?
It's a good question. I'm not even sure my family know what I do for a living, which is quite scary. I'm a tech geek, simple as that. Always have been, always will be, and also a petrol head, as you well know. So I think I liken it to Formula One. Really, I knew we'd get around to Formula One straight away. But,
within the first paragraph,
first few seconds. Formula One is all about technology, data, simulations, AI, and the petrol side of it, which I love, the speed. And that's where my heart is. There's no two ways about it. You take away the speed and the petrol, and what you're basically left with is the tech, the AI, data, and the AI piece. And that's where I am.
Have you always been in tech then? As in, you've always liked it since
yes.
a wee lad?
I'm going to show my age now, but yes, I had a ZX81 I used to borrow from school in about 1982.
Was it the rubber keys?
It wasn't even that good. The Spectrum was the rubber keys.
Yeah.
The ZX80 and 81 had literally a flat keyboard, which you literally had to properly press down the keys to go. It's like a membrane.
Wow.
So that was my first introduction, and it all went downhill from there. So it's all good.
And then you got into financial services and financial planning. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Let's delve into what you've been doing recently, because you've been working at IWP. They're a national firm. They are a very busy firm. They've gone through acquisitions and being acquired, I believe. So just tell me a bit more about, let's start off with IWP. How would you describe that firm, and then what were you doing in the role that you were doing for them?
Yeah, I mean, IWP, I think, were one of the first consolidators, one of the first bunch, grown very, very quickly. Started off in about 2019, I believe, with a handful of firms. By the time I joined in August 21, 2 years, the number was over 30. So the growth was huge, to be honest. And the growing pains were already started to sort of make things creak. Hence my arrival, from my point of view. The arrival itself, when I joined, it was very much tech-based. They didn't have a particularly tech strategy. Every firm was essentially bought on the premise that they would be left alone to run things as they've always run them. And that never really works, because with 33 firms in the estate, we've got 33 different ways of doing things, 33 different ways of processing onboarding, AML check, cash flow modeling, portals, etc. So none of that was working particularly well. Hence the reason why I was dropped in August 21 to try and help that out. From my point of view.
Within advice firms generally, when it comes to the structure of businesses, in the real world, how many firms have like a dedicated CTO or tech geek, really? Because I'm just trying to think, does it normally fall under operations and it's part of someone's wider role? I'm just trying to understand in the real world how if there's a dedicated person within most businesses that should be doing this.
And I think the answer to that is yes, there should be. There very rarely is. It seems to fall on the operational staff. So a lot of firms will have a COO, that COO will be in charge of operations and IT. And IT has always been seen as a poor cousin to operations, something that has to be there because they need to provide laptops and whatever else. And nobody really picks up the data side. And now with the massive influx of AI and data over especially the past 2 to 3 years, that role has become more important for me. And without that role in the business, I think you're just lacking a little bit of control, a little bit of governance, a little bit of direction. And I think that's where I come from my point of view. That's where my headspace is anyway.
So when you joined IWP, what needed to be fixed first?
Good question. I think the biggest problem we had with IWP right at the very start was because of the speed of which it had grown. Everything was outsourced. So we got an outsourced integrations team, we got an outsourced infrastructure, we got outsourced IT help desk. And without having a go at any of these third-party outsourcers, they tend to be full of a lot of people who are passing through, the younger staff rather than sort of like, old seasoned heads. And what they end up doing then is every time you talk to them, you end up talking to a different person. So you have to explain yourself again. And you see it right now when you ring up your bank and you're talking about anything other than a straightforward, transaction. You have to explain the problem straight away to someone else every single time you want a conversation. And that's where they were. That causes frustrations, causes problems, causes a lack of trust from the firms themselves. So then you end up with them trying to fix things themselves rather than going through the central team. And then you end up with more problems because they're plugging things in, unplugging things, they're installing things, uninstalling things, and all of a sudden the whole system's breaking. And that was probably the first and most important thing. So myself and the IT director and the COO sat down, and within the first probably 3 months, we got a plan to get them out and get them replaced within the next 3 months. So by probably around about March, April 22, we've got a full in-house team of IT help desk and support people. And they were brilliant. We brought them in. We interviewed all of those. The interviewing process itself, you can buy skills from anywhere. I've always said you can buy skills from anywhere. There's lots and lots of very clever people out there, and they offer lots and lots of their experience themselves. What you can't buy is fit, cultural fit. IWP was exciting. It was chaotic. There was no real, there was rules, but there weren't really sort of set rules. As long as you got the job done, within a certain sort of boundaries, you could actually sort of do what you wanted. And that takes a different type of skill set than it does to someone who likes a box with a set of governance rules in front of them. So that's what we did. And within the first 6 months, we got that done and dusted. And about 80% of the team are still there. And they've now moved over to the new firm that have taken over IWP. So that leaves me with a lot of pride, really, from that point of view, that we did the good thing and we did it right. So
a lot of it was outsourced. So you needed to create your own in-house resource team. So you did that. And you say it was quite chaotic. How did you sort of react to working in that environment? Because I would have expected from somebody who's into technology, it's about process and workflow. So how did you adapt to that environment? What sort of pressures were you under? It's really weird because you think that, someone like myself who likes order, I like data to be in the right place. I like to know what the data is, who owns it, where it's come from, what the history of is it, where the technology is used to develop that. But also, I like fixing things. IT technology has always been for me. It's always been a lever to fix something, to make something better. So I'm quite happy with chaos, so long as I can see a path out of it. And someone used a phrase a few years back, and I can't remember who it was. They used the phrase tech spaghetti, and that's what IWP was at the time.
33 different firms using 33 different ways of risk profiling, AML checking, cash flow modeling, DMS for documents. They were all using it in different ways. So having all of that spaghetti and essentially sort of making it sort of like, sorting it out and getting the order from it it was quite nice, to be honest with you. So I really enjoyed, I have really enjoyed the last 4.5 years at IWP. It's been a massive growth for me, and it's an opportunity I'm glad I took when I was off.
That's good. And just take me back a little bit when you joined. What was your vision? What did you want to achieve in the time that you were there? Did you set that vision out and then create the strategy? Because there'll be all these component parts that you need to tackle as well. So what was your process to really going in there and make a difference?
I suppose it sort of changed a little bit over time. Before I arrived, it was, going to be great. We're going to have one single tech stack. Everyone's going to be using the same process. It's going to be brilliant, blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, when you're coming from the outside and before you know people and you know the way they do business, you think that an onboarding a client at one firm is going to be exactly the same as another firm, and they're not. They all have little quirks, and even something as silly as whether they do an AML check first or whether they know a customer first, or whether they do verification of ID or whether they get documents. Just having a different order of operations causes its own little problems. So it's sort of changed from that sort of like nirvana, this is going to be great, I'm going to be able to sort it all out, into, oh my God, what have I arrived at? It's tech spaghetti from a point of view of that. And then it landed on very much a case of, well, actually, go out there, meet people, talk to them, work out, sort of spin up your relationships, find out who in the business is doing the work. Because this is not about the CEO. It's not about the sort of the directors of the companies. It's about the operational staff. It's about the people that are actually at the coalface doing the digging. All right. And that's where the actual strategy came from. And that strategy then we got that done and dusted, or I got that done and dusted in probably the start of 23. And it was going to run essentially till the end of 26. Right. So obviously that was cut short because of the deal and what have you. But that's where my head was at when I sort of landed on that. And the strategy itself was very much a case of AI was very much in its infancy. I'd been using AI since about 2019 as my previous role, when I was sort of like a bit more of a technology or technical analyst. And I wanted AI to be in there, but it wasn't, Gen AI really wasn't out at the time. So it was more about the tools that we were using and how we could actually use AI for things like sentiment analysis and take away defined logic and let AI work out the logic itself. That was where the big game was for me. And obviously all of that sitting around a central data store, data warehouse, data lake, whatever you want to call it, and moving away from the CRM as a source of truth, because it was just wasn't correct. It's not fit for purpose.
Just explain, and I've heard this a lot, so maybe explain it to a child like me. When you say data warehouse, data lake, great buzzwords, great word. What does it actually mean in real terms?
It's just a big database. Yeah, that's the way to see it, right? It is literally just a bunch of tables. It's no different to any other database you've ever had. It's just on a larger scale and can store more what's called unstructured data, right? So you end up with your normal, in history, it's just sort of historically has always been about very much a structured data. Client name's always going to be there, an address is always going to be there, a postcode is always going to be there. With a lake, you still get that, but you also get the ability to bring in unstructured data, which could be PDFs, it could be emails, it could be images, it could be actual downloads. And what you end up then is you've got this store that allows you to then analyze all of the data across the estate, not just that structured piece that is in a CRM. Because a CRM is great at storing Paul Miller. It's really no good at storing my driving license or my passport. And if it stores them, you won't be able to analyze them. You won't be able to look at them. Whereas a data lake, I can throw my passport in there and get a passport number out. And then I've got a photo of me with a date of birth and an expiry date. And then I've got a driving license, which has also got a photo of me with an address. So you end up with the ability then to match structured and unstructured data together, which is huge.
Thank you for explaining that. And we'll talk about
I don't know whether
CRMs.
that was a child thing. Not whether a child would have understood that,
Well,
but anyway.
I'm quite an advanced child. I understood it.
That's good.
So no, that was good, because I do think when if you look on LinkedIn or any sort of social platform, everyone talks about, you know, the buzzwords. I always think words matter. So what do they actually mean? And sometimes I think, you know, are we too far gone to actually ask the basic question, data warehouse, data lake? So I understand structured and unstructured, and that's really good. You mentioned CRM. Okay. I wrote an article about the death of the CRM, as you do when you want to get some, you know, some engagement out there. My sort of feeling on CRMs is a lot of it is about human behavior and how you interact with it. And I've come to the conclusion that the human behavior on CRMs is I'm not going to change that. You know, if I look at the business here and the business I'm involved in, they're salespeople. So using the CRM doesn't really work as such.
No.
However, data is gold, and all data should be kept and curated and therefore used to the advantage of the business. But when you were at IWP, did you have one CRM system? Because obviously you had to, you came in, then you sort of insourced everything. So did you have one CRM system at the time you were working there?
We didn't when I first arrived. So one of the big CRMs that we used was in play in about 70% of the businesses. So the outliers essentially were migrated onto that CRM. So we ended up essentially with 33 firms sitting on 23 different instances of the one CRM.
Wow.
Okay. And then what we've done since that, as part of simplification project that before the deal came in, was to take those 23 instances of that CRM and get them down into one single instance. Okay, so essentially we've done take on about I think there were seven different CRMs to start with. So there's 7 migrations to get us into 33, and then 33 into 23, and 23 down to 1. So there's been an awful lot of migrations of data, and the big win, I suppose, really from my point of view, was the operational process that sits behind that. Because all of a sudden, if you're in one CRM, one set of operational processes rather than 23, then you're into that realms where you have no choice but to follow a particular prescribed path. Yeah. And I was always expecting that CRM then would come into its own because of the one prescribed path. Great, brilliant. I can build one workflow for onboarding, and then that'll be it. And then you start to realize that the 1 or 23 or 33 doesn't make an awful lot of difference. The problem is the CRM itself. It's quite restrictive. It's hard to do things, and it suits some firms. It really does. I think if I were a small firm growing, moving into a sort of small to medium and then to medium, it would probably do exactly what it says on the tin, and you'd be fine with it. But once you start to ask it for things that you don't normally get, I want some more revenue analysis. I want all my clients. I want my prospects. I want my leads. I don't just want a valuation or a set of fees. Then you're asking it for bulk data. And as soon as you start asking it for bulk data, if it's not open with an open API that's not restrictive and not throttled, then it's holding you back. And that's, I think, where I've landed from a point of view of my own head, from a CRM point of view.
Okay. So we'll talk about that then during what does the future look like, and we'll delve a little bit more into your head. But going back to IWP, what would you say was the biggest challenge whilst you were there?
I think it's the old, that's the way we've always done it. Yeah. We've got 33 firms in the estate. There's essentially 33 entrepreneurs sitting above those firms. They've built these firms up from scratch. They've got them into a position where they can be sold to IWP. They've sold them, they've still got skin in the game. They're still there, but they are then, we've always done it like this. It's worked. Why change it? And they're all doing things differently. And I think that has been the biggest pain point, getting that mentality away and thinking, actually, well, absolutely, it worked. And you've got 500 clients. Brilliant. But what you've got for 500 clients won't work for 20,000 clients, which is what we got across the entire estate. And it was that scalability that I think that's the way we've always done it, caused the problem with, to be honest.
Because people don't like change, really. Not all people. So it's quite difficult. So what was the execution of the strategy like then? Was there your comms piece had to be tight with regards to bringing people on board? Because every time we make a change in our business, it's like, no, that doesn't work, or that doesn't work as well. And as soon as you get that, people then tend to sort of check out and they want to go back to type or revert back to what they know. So from a bringing everybody to the same sort of point in your strategy, how did you go about that and that change piece?
Look, the big piece of it was the moving down to one single CRM tenant, and that the processes that came with that. And it was very much a case of engagement with the operational staff. Those are the ones that control the local firms. They control the local pots of staff and what work they do and how that work is given out and handed. So it was very much a case of getting those on board, getting those in. We had literally regular meetings with them when we built out the operational flows, the operational processes. But we started very much at the bottom. So rather than being a sort of like, here's the strategy, off you go and make it so, it was very much a case of going to the bottom. What do we want to measure as a business from a point of view of metrics? And there's no real rocket science to it. You want to measure new business. You want to measure attrition. You want to measure clients leaving, the reasons for that. You want to measure ongoing service. You want to measure revenues. There's no real sort of like magic there. But what you basically do then is you basically sort of take that. This is what we want to measure. These are the questions the business need answering on a regular basis. What processes do I need? What data do I need, first of all, to capture those particular pieces, to be able to feed the bottom end? And then what processes do I need to do above that to capture that data, to put that data into the metrics, to get the metrics out the bottom end? So it was very much a bottom up.
Got you.
And because of the engagement with the local operational leads, we had some amazing operational leads out there. That we literally used to sit around a room of probably 8 or 10 people, and we just hammered out things. And because they were the leads that would also that's the way we've always done it. You got past that barrier because suddenly they were seeing the art of the possible that someone else was doing it slightly differently. And I think having that open made all the difference, huge difference.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just trying to get people on the same journey, isn't it? And they need to see the advantages of what you're doing. If we look at through the lens that you have at the moment and what you've achieved through IWP, financial planning is all about the SME market. There are some large players, but majority they're SMEs anyway. So if you look at these established firms, in your opinion, Paul, what are these guys and girls not talking about that they should be talking about when it comes to tech, data, and AI?
I think the big thing for me right now is the fact that data quality and data ownership, those are the two real big ticket items. And everyone goes on about, I've heard the phrase, data is an oil, and it's, they're great. They're great little buzzwords. Throw them out there and brilliant, no problems at all. But it's the actual who owns that data. The advisor will say that he owns the client relationship, but in my experience, a lot of the advisors won't actually own. They won't touch the CRM. They won't touch the data. They'll very much hand that off. So it's making sure you've got an owner for that particular data. Who owns the revenue data coming in? Who makes sure it's correct? And once you've got that, you can then start correcting missing pieces. And I think that is the big thing. And I think that they're all rushing to get AI. It's a great thing. Yeah, AI can save you hours of work. Yes, it can. AI will absolutely make something that's good way better, but something that's bad, it will way worse. And that's the big key. And I think that's having that distinction between the two. And I think that all comes from the ownership and the quality of the data itself.
And what's your opinion on looking at firms anyway, the data quality or data health? I mean, I'm sure it'll vary massively, but I think the conversations that I've had, that there is, there is a, not fear, that's the wrong word. There is concern that the data health isn't that good.
And I would say that the data health is probably poor, to be honest. If I was going to put it on a sort of scale of 1 to 10, I'd say that a lot of firms are probably sitting there between 3 and 5, if I'm honest. And we've got firms across the estate that were absolutely a 7 or an 8. And we've got firms across the estate that were a 1 or a 2. So it's making sure that you don't lose the 7 or an 8 and they don't get worse, while also trying to bring the 1s and the 2s up. And that's the key. It's a constant battle. Every time somebody puts a new record on, changes something, there's a potential for a data quality issue. And that's when you start getting the reporting out the back end. So, what the idea with the simplification process was very much a case of building a BI dashboard, a self-service dashboard to start with, so that we can get the metrics out. But there was also a data quality piece to that. Now, if the process, if we'd have carried on with IWP and I'd have carried on, the next process of that would have been very much a case of that data piece, that data BI piece, suddenly becomes more of a quality checker, a data policeman, for want of a better phrase, that comes along and tells me that I've got a plan that's gone active, but the client is inactive, or I've got a sort of a fee that's suddenly gone up by 30%. Why has it spiked? That type of problem, or I've got a date of birth that's missing, or something. I've got a client that's 125 years old or something. So you end up with that nudges, internal nudges that basically say, is this correct? And I think that continuous improvement then of the data quality, I think, does matter massively.
What's the risk of firms not having good data health?
I think we touched on it. If you don't have that good quality data health, as you call it, you're going to be plugging in things over the top of that. You're going to be using things over the top of that, and AI is a great example of that. So we've gone through the AI is a meeting transcription service, brilliant, and it saves time. It transcribes and summarizes. Absolutely great. It's absolutely bread and butter stuff for AI. The next phase of that then is very much a case of, well, let's plug it into a suitability report, or let's add some context from the client. Well, how can you add context from the client if the client data is incorrect? If you don't know when they were born, or whether or not they're a UK resident, or whether or not they've got a relationship and what they're in, what car they drive and what salary they have, how can you add context then to a meeting from the database, from the data lake, if that data quality is poor?
It's massive, isn't it? It's just we seem to have a strange relationship with data. Like, it can be onerous to actually put stuff on there, but actually the power of the data, once it's plugged into your workflows, to your agents, it will increase your productivity. It will
massively.
It's just an efficiency gain. But when people, I think everyone's got a different understanding of data anyway, and the power of what it could be used for. So maybe we can just sort of touch on that, because ultimately I look at it from, my perspective in business here, and I'm thinking it's the engine of everything that you do. And you can see things in real time. You can see the attrition rate. You can see what clients are, the behaviors and everything. And therefore those nudges coming to the consultants are really powerful. Yeah. But I still feel that there is very much about data. It's database. It's linked to a database, and it's like, well, I've just put a name on there. That's it. Yeah. So I think there's probably a disconnect between where the future is going, where people, the visionary people, can see where it goes, and where actually, in reality, a large proportion of people just live in, I've just got to put this on there, I've got to go to the filing cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, look, I liken it to, I always say that I was working in data before it got cool, because data is now actually quite cool. In a data geeky type of way,
yeah. Each to their own there, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, we had a great example of this with the early days of IWP, when we started to work out what the business wants to measure, and what the PEOs are going to need from a point of view of their own sanity, that the business is on the right track. And something as silly as how many clients have we got, right? Now that should be absolutely, data CRM 101. How many clients have you got? But then you're into what is a client?
God, yeah.
Now it seems like a really stupid question, right? But what is a client? So you look at the FCA handbook, and I've got the FCA handbook bit in there. It basically says any person to whom a firm provides or intends to provide or has provided a service.
Intends.
So the FCA are classing it as a prospect, someone you intend to provide a service to, a client that you've got on there already that you're providing a service to, or an ex-client that's actually sort of potentially now closed their account down the left as also provided. So that's what the FCA think. Now, great, brilliant. There you go. It's all sorted. No problems at all. Finance, all the finance people care about really is how much revenue is being generated by the client. So if the client is a non-revenue generating client, they're not really classing it as a client number. Yeah. Compliance, want to know about, surprise, surprise, FCA again, ongoing service and the provision of services to that particular client themselves. So they count it slightly differently. Marketing, just want to look at leads and prospects. Sales, just really want to look at leads and prospects, the qualified side of it, because then they can sell and then they can sort of get their bonuses and whatever else. And then you end up situated with the operational people, and all the operations really care about is, well, actually, has a client been onboarded to the system? If they are, then they're under their remit, then they own the client data. So that's where their line is. So we've got 5 different ways of counting a client then, which are all totally different to what the FCA say. And that's just with one piece of data. Jeez. So it's about that definition. It's making sure that everybody understands when I talk about a client or an account or a plan or a prospect or a relationship, what am I actually measuring? And this is where the beautiful thing about the lake comes in, because if everything is in the lake, then what you can do then is you can filter that out. Almost, I liken it to almost like a water tower. Imagine a water tower at the back of your lake, right? And you've got water towers for each department: compliance, finance, marketing, risk. And they can actually have their own measures in there, their own categorization of the clients. So they can just deal with the count that they're worried about, not have to worry about all the noise and the other categorizations that sit out there. And that's how I liken the actual sort of process of the data moving from the lake into the water towers and down into the actual sort of reporting for the departments.
Yeah, I understand that. I also think, God, that's a lot of work. I'm looking at it and going,
yeah.
So, and I think where I'm going to sort of steer the conversation now is towards that practical blueprint or the sequence of what comes first. Because as a business owner, you're working in a small business, you've got CRMs, you've got different types of tech stacked onto whatever CRM, whatever plugin, whether they work, whether they don't work. You've got some data, some of it's okay, some of it's just, where is it? Is it in the filing cabinet? I think where people are falling down, and we've had round tables on this, is there's lots of talk about AI and the future and what it could look like, but it's almost people are struggling with, well, where do we start? What do we actually need to do? And what's the formula for this? Because I would be looking at it and going, shit, definition of a client. Well, my definition is different to somebody else's. Yeah. And then you think, well, how long is that going to take just to define a client? So you have to have a very tight leadership team that are driving this forward. So in my head, I'm now thinking, and I'm on this, by the way, and I'm going through this. It's a lot of work. And sometimes, I mean, you say it's sexy. I'm probably slightly different to that. Some other things are a little bit more sexy to me, but each to their own. So it's one of those where I would look at it, and many business owners look at it and go, great, we can do this, and we can reduce the cost, but we can have increased performance, and we can spend more time with the client. But when it comes to the muck and bullets of actually doing it, this is where I think people go, oh, the implementation, the execution. So this is where I think you can help thousands of people now, Paul. So sequence, blueprint, what's the starting point? What do people need to be doing?
Look, first and foremost, this doesn't have to stop the business from doing what it does already. The business carries on the process of it is. And then what you can do then is you can you can take that data out and you can build that. So looking back at what we did with IWP, it was very much a case of the biggest problem is the CRM isn't the source of truth because it's restrictive. So we built our own warehouse. All right. Now that sounds really scary. It's not. And it evolves over time. And you can start with a really simple client extract, client master file, right? And then you can simply go from there to like a plan master. So then you've got a client and a plan. So now you know whether a client is active with a plan or inactive because they haven't got a plan, So you start adding, so you can start building these blocks together. And the beautiful thing with that is the fact that data warehouse allows then a visibility of the data that you've never had before. So you get this automatically. And this then highlights whether or not your CRM is essentially a bottleneck. Because if your CRM does not allow you to take data out in bulk or restricts your API access and doesn't have an API for a piece of information, then straight away, it's probably the wrong CRM. Or it's doing the wrong job. So that's where the shift left moves into it, and the data becomes the center of the universe. Once you've actually started to get the building blocks for your warehouse, you've got your client master, your plan master, you start thinking about the valuations, the fees that plug onto the back of that. You can then start thinking about the actual the tasks that sit around that process, what the client does, how the client does it, where the assets are. You've started to essentially build up. There's a term out there now which I really, really love the way it does, which is called a knowledge graph. And a knowledge graph allows you to see the relationships between two different things. Okay. And that may well be a client to a plan, to a fee, to a valuation, and it shows you a path of how the data connects together. And I like that visual element of that. It allows you to see things quite easily about where things are connected. And the actual bit that comes out the back of that then is that data warehouse is sitting there. It's protected. It's sitting on an Azure estate as we were using IWP or AWS or Google or whatever else. It's sitting behind a firewall. It's completely protected from the outside world. So you've got all of this massive data then starting to grow. You can then start taking feeds in. We took feeds in from things like Companies House for directors, FCA for certifications of advisors, HR for things like the payroll and the actual the details about the employees. Then you can match the employee to the advisors because they're in a database and you can connect them together. Then straight away you've got that link between two different, discrete little pieces of information inside tables. That then highlights data quality issues. If you're taking those feeds in, you're adding in feeds from platforms. We, prime example of that, we took a feed in from one of the platforms and the NI numbers were completely different to the NI numbers we got in our master database. And it's that type of quality issue then that comes at the back automatically for free. And all of this is going on while the advisors are still going out and meeting clients. They're still generating business. That data is still flowing into the CRM as it always has done using the operational processes that are there. So you're not stopping something to do something else. You're just running it on the side. Now, that's an awkward conversation because all of a sudden you've got to talk to your CEO and your finance people about, I want to go out and employ 3 or 4 people to build this. And they're going to be here for 12, 18 months while they're building it, But that's just the way it is. It's got to be like that.
And is there a formula to work out additional headcount? So if you're a business owner and you think I've got 10 employees, then I need to invest 1.5 in terms of full-time equivalent headcount, or I've got 30 people, so it's going to be a team of data analysts or whatever. Is there anything?
No, not that I've seen. Look, there's an old thing about that. 9 women can't have a baby in a month type of scenario. So it's not just about chucking resource at something.
I've never heard that before. I like that one.
Yeah, but sometimes you can increase the resource to get the speed and the timeline down, but you don't need to, because this is very much about the insights that you're gathering from it. You start small, you start to bolt on. These things can bolt on together. And the beautiful thing about the bolt on together is the fact that you can then go back and tweak the client master. If you decide then the client master, you've decided didn't need an NI number, now suddenly does need an NI number, then you go back and tweak it, and that can just evolve over time. It's very much about pressures from above, really, pressures from your board, pressures from the PE owners and whatever else that drives that, rather than a set formula in my head anyway.
But I guess what we're saying is if firms aren't doing this, then they are going to be left behind.
But they are, and going back to the AI piece, because it's in your face 24/7 at the moment. It's gonna feed the AI piece. The last thing you want is first and foremost, the last thing you want is your staff using AI tools off the back of the desk and taking photographs of contracts and say, analyze this for me, right? But also the last thing you want is your AI to be starting to have access to your full database. So having the ability to build out that database, to build out that lake, that central store, and then think, right, okay, what do we want AI to have a look at to be able to see? So then you can build out an AI miniature data lake, a mart, whatever you want to call it, a water tower, just for AI, that's got client details in there, but it's not Paul Miller, it's reference 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So straight away, you probably keep things like a postcode or a first 4 digits of a postcode. So you've got an area of the country that Paul lives in. So straight away, you can then start cross-checking whether or not what type of house he lives in, what type of car he drives, is his salary above or below that particular area's, average. And you can do all of that then while protecting the client identity. So no personal information has gone into that. So you're restricting your AI's ability to see what you want it to see because you've built a specific piece for this AI to look at. And that removes then the problem of the shadow AI from the point of view of that, which is, at the moment running riot.
And where are businesses, in your opinion, where are they sort of landing with governance and compliance and data protection? Because obviously you've just mentioned something there that's protected, it's numbers rather than individual data. But a lot of people are just using ChatGPT and uploading stuff on there anyway, irrespective of whether they put privacy notifications on it or not. But in your opinion, where are firms going? What should they be looking at, which they're not on this?
I think first and foremost is the fact that, look, if you do not prescribe something, people will use it anyway. So be open, allow people to use these things, but use them in your environment, not their own environment. And if you're doing that, you've got more controls over it. You can control what is uploaded and downloaded. You can control what actually sort of data is given to these things. You can also control the actual sort of the settings that sit behind that. I mean, ChatGPT's got settings, and so has Claude, about whether or not the data is used for model training, and that type of thing is just off the bat then, rather than telling people, make sure you turn this off, but you're doing it because it's controlled within your estate. And also then they're on the hook. If you don't have something that says, use this, we're giving you something, and they go out and use their own tool, they're making a rod for their own back type of thing, aren't they?
No, it's one of those things. Some people are a bit more attuned to what's happening and they're using it anyway, but I don't think sometimes we understand the risks, especially, to be fair, in financial planning, which is hugely regulated as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be very, very careful.
Oh, yeah. It is massive. And look, with all financial services, the FCA have woken up to AI now, and they've got a sandbox, I believe they've launched now, that people can come in and they can try tools out and play with things in certain ways, especially if you're building something with AI. So it is getting better, but at the same time, it's about protecting your own staff and your own client. Education is always going to be key. At IWP, we went through a whole process for cyber of bringing out a phishing training for all of our staff. Now came in from the IT director, which was absolutely brilliant. Bite-sized training, the dangers, mobile phones, Facebook logons, etc., MFA turn on, and all of that was covered off because of the training that was rolled out. Similar sort of thing with AI. Train your staff, give them a framework they can work to where they can use these tools safely. You're still waiting for them to make a mistake and use something they're not supposed to be using, but then they're going to be held accountable then, aren't they? So,
okay,
it is difficult.
Let's talk about my pet hate at the moment, CRMs. We're going through a process of looking at different CRM providers, but we're actually talking to firms who have, it's a small part of what they do. The rest of it is AI native, which seems to be the language everyone's talking about, AI native, where CRMs tend to have legacy issues because they have to undo years and years worth of work to actually become a little bit more, as they would say, AI native. But let's just go back to your sequencing. So you've got the data into a good health. And you've been through it in terms of what a client is, and it's all there, and it's clean, and it's working for you. So the data integrity is obviously the first piece. Once you've got that, what's the need for a CRM system? Because my understanding is that just houses the data anyway and doesn't really.
Yeah.
If somebody said to me, "How much money do you make from your database?" I would say very, very little.
Yeah. I'm very much in the camp that I don't need a CRM. Okay. It is legacy. Some of these CRMs now are 30 odd years old, right? They keep bolting on the latest tool. Everybody seems to be on a bit of a land grab at the moment. Every tool you're looking at is launching a portal and an MI dashboard, and they want your client data on there because they know that data, like you said right at the start, is gold. So you've got that scenario, and then you've got the CRMs doing exactly the same thing. They're trying to be relevant. They're trying to plug in a tool. I mean, a lot of the CRMs now do meeting transcription because then they don't need you to go out and buy a meeting transcriber. But they're behind the curve from that point of view because they're legacy, because they're sort of almost like waiting to sort of see where the market goes. No one's really leading it. And I think you're into that realm then of, well, what does the CRM provide me? So CRMs provide me with, talking personally, a valuation of all my client plans, the fees that those client plans do. And that's it. All right. Everything else, all the client data, I can put in a data warehouse. I can get it from there.
Yeah.
Reporting, I can run the reporting from the data warehouse because I'm a lot more confident that I've got control of that data. I can quality check it. I can run a portal from that data warehouse. The client is getting everything he wants from there. And the thing that holds all of that back is the feeds then from the CRM. Because you want feeds every single day from your CRM. And if your CRM is not providing you with that, and it's not providing you with everything, then you're going to end up with a scenario where your data's out of date. We found one CRM which did a weekly update, let you take the data out on a weekly basis en masse. And then when the client logged onto the portal, it then updated that single client within the database. So essentially it meant that if I logged on and you didn't, my data was from today. Your data was from Saturday night. So as someone who, sort of takes that data in as a feed, that is completely pointless to me because your data is not as up to date as my data is. You know what I mean? And that's the sort of scenarios you've got. And then you start thinking, well, actually, what else does the CRM provide me? It provides me with an audit trail. It's not a very good one. It doesn't provide me with a history essentially over time. So if I changed my address today, the CRM would have my new address in there. It potentially might not have my old address, so it wouldn't know where I lived. It's point in time stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no real reason why that CRM then stores that information, doesn't give it you back. But you've also got then the workflows on top of that. Add the workflows over the top. It's not a very good workflow tool. So if you take away the CRM, what are you left with? You're left with I need somewhere where I can see the data and maintain it, some sort of web page, sitting over your database. I need a workflow tool that's going to be able to allow me to look at that data, process things, send tasks to people, nudge clients, nudge advisors, nudge admin staff. I then need a reporting tool. I need a portal tool. And all of that feeds from the warehouse itself. So then your CRM becomes valuations and fees. That's it. That is where my head is right at now. It's valuations and fees. And the only reason it's got valuations and fees is because it's got integrations to banks and platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the likes of the tools out there now. One of the ones I looked at previously was like Origo, who provide multiple feeds into multiple platforms. If they get to a tipping point, then I don't need the CRM then for the valuations. So all I'm left then with is fees. And those fees can come in on the same thing. So then the CRM is pointless. Completely pointless. It then becomes that's the way we've always done it. Mm-hmm. So shift it left, let people update that and use that as their front end, but take away all of the noise, all of the surrounding bolt-ons. And that's where my head's at. No two ways about it.
Is that a common viewpoint by other people in the tech world within FS?
I think it's becoming more common, if I'm honest. I've been banging on about this now for probably 3 years. And I know you had Poppy Achilles on a few months back. Poppy did a great webinar last year with Charlie Simmons from Alirity about the shift left. And that shift left was very much about moving the tools, not just the CRM, but moving the tools to be just the tools around the center of a database. And I think that spiked an awful lot of interest last year. And I think a lot more people are thinking the same way.
Let me, I'm going to mention this. It'll be, if people just joined at this point, they think, what is he talking about? But have you seen the film Iron Man, the Marvel cinematic?
Yes.
Right. Iron Man. Right. So Tony Stark. Okay, he's a tech dude, right? You'll probably get on with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where am I going with this? Get the link quickly. So I've had this vision, and it was Ed in my office who probably helped me sort of articulate it better. So Tony Stark, Iron Man, he has effectively an AI agent working with him called Jarvis. So he'll say, Jarvis, I need a new suit. Jarvis, what am I doing today? Da, da, da. When you talk about workflows and nudges, the possibility of once you maybe shift left, does the future look like where an advisor could walk into a business and effectively have their own Jarvis saying, okay, you have a client over here whose fund is up or down or whatever, or it's a client's birthday, don't forget it's whatever. And so they're not sort of sitting behind a desk where it's almost like you have an assistant and it's coming in and it's telling you what you need to be doing. And if you need to set a task and that needs to go to operations, that needs to go to finance. Is this the world that we are heading towards?
Oh, I think without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, look, I at the moment, I don't like talking to my phone. I don't like talking to Siri. I've tried it several times and it feels alien, but it will become the norm. And I do think that you're going to end up with a scenario where my own financial advisor has been brilliant, and he's been my advisor now for 30 years, right? But he still comes out with his 30-page PDF once or twice a year. But he's the way he is because, he's getting retirement age now. I think he's past retirement age now. I think he's had enough. Probably me has driven him to it. So he won't change from that point of view. But the new tranche of advisors, it'll be the norm. The norm will be to take an iPad with you, let the client see the iPad, you have the iPad. You've got you've got an AI agent sitting on the side of it, and as the client is talking, it's transcribing in real terms, it's picking up insights in real terms, it's offering advice in real terms. There's no reason why that client can't have that on a portal that provides, analyze my portfolio, explain to me, my advisor's just sent me my statement, what's it mean? That should be absolutely, 101. Because at the end of the day, that explanation that's given to the client then should be done in real time. The client should be asked, if you had to ask a question, it gives you an answer. If there's a task off the back of that, that task should be logged automatically. The advisor gets that, the admin staff get that. There's a nudge set up for a week's time that if it's not been provided, let's say you're going to an AML check and you need to provide a driving license. Your driving license should be provided, uploaded, analysed immediately. Taking your address out, checked against your address, date of birth, check against your date of birth, driving license number, expiry date. Expiry date should be set in the future so that when the driving license is due to expire, not only does the advisor and the admin staff know, but the client should know as well, because so many people I've heard that have had their driving license expired and they didn't even know about it. So it's that type of thing that comes out automatically without doing any work whatsoever.
And that happened to me and my wife. Our driving license expired and we were caught short when we went abroad.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And that to me is powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And I got my new driving license a few months back, and the first thing that I've done is set a calendar entry for 2034 to tell me when my driving license is due to expire. So, and I've done that manually, but I shouldn't need to. Especially if I'm talking to a financial advisor, that should be automatic. Same with a passport. These type of things then come out automatically from a voice agent. Now, the voice agents are a little bit behind at the moment, but I have seen things playing around now that literally within a few seconds will actually record and answer back. I mean, they're quite scary, really, and sometimes they answer back, especially when you get it in certain people's terminology, like Donald Trump responding to your client services query. It's quite strange.
Does he use the word beautiful quite a lot?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's the best response you can ever give. But that's the sort of thing that you're going to get. And you imagine that then, on my point of view and advice, the client can get that immediately. And then not only that, you've got that agent sitting there, but there's also other things that we're missing at the moment. And one of the things I think we're missing at the moment is the impact on your portfolio, on your life, of events. You imagine if you'd got an agent sitting there that was monitoring your portfolio 24/7 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Then straight away, very well that that's going to impact oil prices, it's going to impact wheat, it's going to impact gas prices. So straight away, the impact on your portfolio within minutes of it happening. Rachel Reeves's budget last year, God forbid. You've got the impact of that immediately on your portfolio. The inheritance tax changes straight away. You're going to know whether or not it's going to impact you. That's the sort of thing that comes out from having the ability to have something that's just running, doing nothing 24/7, but monitoring a particular piece of your portfolio.
And what you're saying, this is possible. This isn't fantasy. This is happening.
No, right now, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Has any firm actually achieved it yet? That sort of almost 100% operational fluidity.
There's a couple of tools going on in the US at the moment who are going down this particular route. There's one called Denali, if I'm able to call them out. They're very good. They do the database, but they also do the AI agents over the top of it for data quality monitoring. I think there's Altruist as well, who very much a sort of financial services. They're very, very up there at the moment. So there's an awful lot. Big shout out to advisorsoftware.com for fair, because they've now got an AI comparison tool. And I think that itself allows you to very simply see what's out there and what they can offer, what tools they offer. A lot of them are very much bolt-on, like I said, and on land grabs. But that will change. And, they're all going to run their own little databases. They're all going to run their own little data lakes, data warehouses, whatever you want to call them, and start talking to your data. So it'd be database to database is a lot easier than going through a CRM. And that's a lot easier. But then you need to make sure that your protections are in place. Access controls are in place. Your clients protected from a point of view of anonymized tokenized information rather than a live client information talking to a live client information. So that's where your next level of the why do I build a data warehouse? That's the sort of reason you build a data warehouse.
Yeah. And that's the bit most business owners, if you're visionary, you'll start to buy into that, because you'll see not just the productivity gains, the cost savings, there will be cost pressures as well, because you'll have to think about your fees and what you're offering, because probably will be a benefit to a client in a way, because you won't be charging X amount of thousands of pounds, which took you hours to do, and actually now it takes seconds. So there's going to be price pressures moving down the chain.
There is, and no two ways about it. But you imagine this sort of like, the wow factor of a client when you sit down in front of them and they've got their latest yearly annual review, and instead of literally just going through 30 pages of PDF, that PDF is interactive. They can talk to it. They can ask it questions. Why is that up? Why is that down? And move between it like a table of contents. Imagine a full table of content. You click it, you go straight away into performance data. What does that mean? And it explains it in easy words to understand why your performance has gone up, what's it gone down. That a client will pay for that.
Yeah, I would. Because I'll be asking it the childlike question, like, what does that mean again?
Absolutely.
Tell me again.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay. So it sounds like you're generally positive about the future then, Paul.
Yeah, very positive. Like. I think it's good. That there's a lot of people out there that are AI is going to take my job, and it probably will in some cases. But in a lot of cases, it's going to make your job a lot easier, and I think it will open up areas that you probably didn't even know existed from that point of view.
I think from the conversation that I had and what I see is from a financial planning perspective, it's going to focus the individual, the planners, to really be client facing and the relationship side, because that's where ultimately you're building up trust anyway. So I can see the benefit of that. But if you are an advisor that's, not hidden behind your technical knowledge, but that's been your go-to sort of objection handling, like I've got all these qualifications. It's less so when everything is more seamless and tied together, because AI will learn. It will learn every single complexity that's ever happened, because it's finite. There's not billions of different things that can go on within a cash flow modeling. So it'll understand. It needs work, but ultimately it will get there far quicker than we can.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always like to go back to Formula One because it's my go-to.
It's been a while. It's been about 20 minutes.
It's been a while. Yeah, I'll say it's been a while. I was on a call. I got invited to a call with McLaren before Christmas. It was a generic sort of like webinar, but I got an invite to it, which was great. They do 50 million simulations every race weekend.
Wow.
Of when a safety car can hit, what about if it hits here, what about if it hits there, what about if the rain, what about if the tyre deck, etc., etc. You imagine that. So I watched the program years ago called The Black Mirror. Loved The Black Mirror. And one of the ones on there was a couple that were going out, and then it was not working. Then suddenly they'd start again. They were going out and that wasn't working. They were getting at different stages where it was working and wasn't working. Then suddenly at the end of an hour's program, you get this big number that comes on the screen, something like 99.7. Then it pans back and the guy is in a pub with a what if AI app of how compatible he is with this woman.
Oh.
And she's got the app as well. So essentially this is showing you the AI doing a what if scenario, but actually showing it in a TV program. So you can actually sort of see those different what ifs. But that's the benefit of AI. It can do those millions and millions of simulations and work out, what if I downsize my house? What if I bought a new car?
Wow.
Shall I buy it now? Shall I buy it in April? Shall I buy it next April? Those straight away, that having the ability to do that and having the ability to calculate what impact that's going to have in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, and add in children, universities, downsizing, illness, long-term care, etc. Have all of that literally thrown in the mix and have it generate the scenarios and having it generate the best possible plan for you in probably minutes. is massive.
That's, yeah. I mean, when you woke up this morning, did you think you'd be talking about Iron Man and Black Mirror? Do you know what I mean? And
No.
it's amazing that, yeah, I mean, these programs are literally foretelling the future in a way.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to explore before I start to ask you the final couple of questions? Because we've talked about the sequencing, we've talked about getting the buy-in and the comms and some of the governance rules. Is there anything you feel like you'd like the opportunity to explain or just harness a point?
I think the only point that really comes, there's always a big question of best of breed versus one umbrella, one tool, and the CRMs, like I said, are building in cash flow modelers now and reporting suites and AI now is being plugged into there. I am, and I will always be best of breed, always be, because it's always been that 80-20 rule for me. If I can get 80% of what I'm looking for from a tool, and then the 20% that's around the outside that I can wrap in a workflow or a process or another database or a feed of some sort, that is always going to be better than compromising the way I do things so that it's just one tool in one place. And I think that's one of the things that I think that I've come away with IWP from is that is my big takeaway, I think, from that point of view, because I just don't feel that compromising the way I do ongoing service or an onboarding process and offboarding process because a CRM tells me I need to do that instead of actually sort of wrapping something else that does a better job in an actual process that I want to use is a way better way of doing things.
Because my last question would be, if you were to give some advice to the consolidators, and maybe give some advice to some startups, because what we're seeing now, certainly from a recruitment side, is there's spin-offs, new businesses being created, new ideas, new vision, new way of doing things, great. But also we've got legacy, established firms,
yes.
You've got consolidators. So just with what you said there, if you wanted these guys to take away something from this conversation, something which makes them think, or maybe they need to look in the Black Mirror, what would it be for an established company, and what would it be for a startup business?
I think startup. I think the startup is a lot easier. I mean, there's not that much difference between the two. But look, everything you buy, everything that you look at, the first question that you should be asking is, how can I get hold of my data? Yeah, I have a little story. It won't take long. We had a risk management piece of software being demoed to us, and the risk management were very proud of the fact that they could build all these dashboards and the MI process and whatever else. And what they wanted me to do to get hold of my data was to download the data as a CSV. So essentially what they're saying is they want me to risk my data by downloading it to my local laptop where it could be lost, left on there, picked up by somebody else, left on a train, wherever else, so that I can get hold of my data. Now, that's adding its own risk. And the irony was completely lost on the salesman when I asked the question. And that's the sort of thing you get, is the fact that, well, you can just download it. Don't want to download it. I want it to be available to me as an API, as a feed, whatever you want to call it, rather than me having to manually go in. And I want it scheduled. I want to arrive at 8 o'clock in the morning at work and have it already sitting there and ready to go in my data warehouse, already preloaded, transformed and stored, rather than me going into a tool and downloading it. And they're all building their own little dashboards. As someone who has fed dashboards and information to boards and excos over the past few years, I don't want to be grabbing data feeds from left, right, and center to build something. I want my data warehouse to build it for me. That's why I built it. That's why I made it. And so that is huge. That data access is open. As far as like consolidation side, I know that IWP didn't. I don't think that a lot of them do. they don't look at the quality of the data that's in the system enough. These tend to be brokers, and my apologies to all the accountants and finance people out there, bean counters, that are looking at the EBITDA, they're looking at the headcount, they're looking at how much revenues you get and how much expenditure you're making. They're not looking at whether or not what system they're on, whether that data is available, the quality of that data that runs, the IT tech that sits there, the tech debt that's sitting there waiting to bite them. And almost none of them are looking at that. And I think that's a miss, because at the end of the day, you go out and you spend millions of pounds on a firm, and it takes you 3 years to integrate them because they've got kit that's 15 years old and none of their data is right. That's not a good business, And what that will do is, not only will it focus the consolidators' minds on this is important, but it will also focus on those looking at selling their business and exiting, that this is important to be able to sell this, because it'll be worth more money, because it's cleaner, it's easier to access, it's better, it's more modern, it's not legacy, and it's got no skeletons hidden. And I think that's the sort of two things I'd probably say.
Excellent. Well, Paul Miller, you've made tech and AI sound sexy. So
hey,
job done. No, thank you very much.
My job here is done. It's great.
No, thank you very much. I've got one final question, which I ask every guest. And this is my magic wand question. So I'm always interested to see what people's responses are. So I'm going to give you a magic wand, and this magic wand can give you one wish and one wish only. What would you wish for and why?
I'd like to see my dad again. Simple as that. He died when I was 15, and that's every day.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Paul, it's been a delight. There we go. Jarvis, Iron Man, Black Mirror. There we go. Excellent. Final question. Who do you think is going to win the Formula One championship this year?
Oh, it's going to be McLaren. Got to be McLaren fan. I don't mind Oscar or Lando, to be honest. Obviously, I'm a Brit. I want Lando, but McLaren are looking strong. So are Mercedes, so are Ferrari. I'm an anybody but Red Bull fan. So I'm a McLaren fan first and foremost. And if it's not McLaren, it can't be Red Bull. Apart from that, I'm good.
Colours to the best. Paul Miller,
absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me today. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Cheers, James. Take care.
Cheers.